Hello students, welcome to MGC Learning. Under the chapter Human Health and Diseases, today we are going to see the topic that is cancer. As I said, this topic is divided into three parts. So today we are going to see the part number 2, that is types of a cancer. So student, our today's topic is cancer, part number 2, that is types of a cancer. Let's see the content of our today's topic. The content of our today's topic is types of a cancer. In this content, we are going to see the different types of a cancer. And the name of that cancers are number 1, carcinomas, number 2, sarcomas, number 3, lymphomas, number 4, leukemia, and number 5, that is Adeno Mass. So start with the types of a cancer. According to the type of a tissue affected, there are 5 main types of a cancer. That means this classification is based on the types of a tissue which is affected. So depending upon the type of a tissue which is affected, on the basis of that, there are 5 main types of a cancer. Out of which, number 1 is known as a carcinomas. Carcinomas. Here you have 2 marks question. Write a short note on carcinomas or define carcinomas or give some examples of carcinomas. The cancer which arise in the epithelial tissue covering or lining the body organs is known as a carcinomas. So student, in carcinomas, the tissue which is affected, it's nothing but the epithelial tissue. So carcinomas, the cancer which arise in the epithelial tissue which covers or lines the body organ is known as a carcinomas. So the tissue which is affected in a carcinomas, it's nothing but the epithelial tissue. Example of carcinomas: breast cancer, lung cancer, cancer of a stomach, and the skin cancer. So the some examples of carcinomas are breast cancer, lung cancer, cancer of a stomach, and the skin cancer. This is about the carcinomas. I repeat the points once again. Carcinomas, the cancer which arise in the epithelial tissue or the cancer which is related to the epithelial tissue which covers and the lines the body organ is known as a carcinomas. In short, in carcinomas, the tissue which is affected, it's nothing but the epithelial tissue. And the example of carcinomas are breast cancer, lung cancer, cancer of a stomach, and the skin cancer. This is about the type number 1, that is carcinomas. Let's start with type number 2, that is sarcomas. Sarcomas, the cancer which is related to the connective tissue or the cancer which arise in the connective tissue is known as a sarcomas. In sarcomas, the tissue which is affected, it's nothing but the connective tissue. So the definition of a sarcomas, the cancer which arise in the connective tissue is known as a sarcomas. And the example of sarcomas, number 1, muscle tumor, which is also known as a myosarcoma. Number 2, bone tumor, which is also known as a osteosarcoma. Number 3, cancer of cartilage, which is also called as a chondrosarcoma, and the cancer of adipose tissue, which is also known as a lipo or the liposarcoma. So myosarcoma means muscle tumor, osteosarcoma means bone tumor, chondrosarcoma means cancer of cartilage, and the lipo or the liposarcoma means cancer related to the adipose tissue are the some example of sarcomas. So in sarcomas, the type of a tissue which is affected, it's nothing but the connective tissue. So here again you have 2 marks question. Write a short note on sarcomas or give some examples of sarcomas. So if the question is asked, give the example of sarcomas, then your answer is muscle tumor, which is known as a myosarcoma, bone tumor, which is also known as a osteosarcoma, cancer of cartilage, which is known as a chondrosarcoma, and the last, that is cancer of adipose tissue, which is known as a liposarcoma. And if the question is asked, define sarcomas, the cancer which is related to the connective tissue or the cancer which arise in the connective tissue is known as a sarcomas. So this is about type number 2 cancer which is known as a sarcomas. Let's start with the third type of a cancer which is known as a lymphomas. Lymphomas, the cancer which is related to the lymphatic system or the lymphatic tissue is known as a lymphomas. So definition, the cancer which arise in the lymphatic tissue, that cancer is known as a lymphomas. In short, the cancer related to the lymphatic system of a man is known as a lymphomas, and the type of tissue which is affected is known as a lymphatic tissue. Example of lymphomas: number 1, cancer of lymphatic nodes, cancer of a spleen, and the cancer of a immune system. So cancer of lymphatic nodes, cancer of a spleen, and the cancer of immune system are the some example of a lymphomas which is related to the cancer of a lymphatic tissue or the tissue which is affected. It's nothing but the lymphatic tissue. Again here your 2 marks question. Write a short note on lymphomas or give the example of lymphomas. So example of lymphomas: cancer of lymphatic nodes, cancer of a spleen, and the cancer of immune system. And the tissue which is affected, it's nothing but the lymphatic tissue. Start with the fourth type of a cancer which is known as a leukemia. Leukemia, the cancer which is related to the bone marrow, or the cancer which arise in the bone marrow is known as a leukemia. Student, the most important point, it is a type of a blood cancer. So blood cancer is also known as a leukemia, or leukemia is also known as a blood cancer. In the leukemia, there is an excessive formation of a WBC in the bone marrow. The main symptom of leukemia, there is an excessive formation of a white blood cells or the WBC in the bone marrow. Further, people suffering from the leukemia have very high leukocyte count. So main symptom for the leukemia is the people suffering from the leukemia have very high leukocyte count. There are various types of leukemia such as a monocytic leukemia and the lymphoblastic leukemia. So there are 2 main types of leukemia. One is a monocytic leukemia and the second one is known as a lymphoblastic leukemia. This is about the fourth type of a cancer which is known as a leukemia. And the question, write a short note on a blood cancer or write a short note on a leukemia. So for this question, you are going to use the following points. Point number 1, the cancer which is related to the bone marrow or the cancer which arise in the bone marrow is known as a leukemia. So the bone marrow is affected in the leukemia. Point number 2, it is a type of a blood cancer. In this, there is an excessive formation of a white blood cells, that is WBC, in bone marrow. Further, people suffering from the leukemia have very high leukocyte count. So high leukocyte count, it is one of the major symptom of a leukemia patient or the leukemia. And there are 2 main types of leukemia. One is a monocytic leukemia and the second one is a lymphoblastic leukemia. This is about 4 type of a cancer which is known as leukemia. Another word, it is also known as a blood cancer. It is related to the bone marrow. There are 2 types of leukemia, monocytic leukemia and the lymphoblastic leukemia. And the major symptom is there is a high leukocyte count. Leukocyte count. Start with the last cancer which is known as a adenomas. Adenomas, another word, it is also known as a adeno Carcinomas. So adenocarcinomas or the adenomas, this is the fifth type of a cancer. I repeat, another word for the adenomas is adenocarcinomas. Adenomas, this cancer, it is related to the thyroid gland, pituitary gland and the adrenal gland. So in short, the cancer which arise in the thyroid gland, pituitary gland, adrenal gland and the glandular tissue is known as adenomas or the adenocarcinomas. I repeat, adenomas, it is a type of a cancer which affects the thyroid gland, pituitary gland, adrenal gland and the glandular tissue. So the cancer which is related to the thyroid gland, pituitary gland, adrenal gland and the glandular tissue, that cancer is known as adenomas or the adenocarcinomas. This is about the types of cancer. Let's discuss the question based on this topic. The first question, write a note on carcinomas. 2 marks question. So for this question, you have to write at least 4 points. You have to write examples. You have to write the definition. Question number 2, comment on sarcomas. Again 2 marks question. 4 points are needed. Number 3, what is lymphomas? Number 4, describe leukemia. And number 5, define adenomas. That is 1 mark question. So may such type of question will be asked on this topic. Let's take a revised part. Types of a cancer. According to the type of a tissue affected, there are 5 main types of a cancer. First one is a carcinomas. Into this, the tissue which is affected, it's nothing but the epithelial tissue. Number 2, sarcomas. The tissue which is affected in a sarcomas, it's nothing but the connective tissue. Lymphomas. In this, lymphatic tissue is affected, so it is known as a lymphomas. Leukemia. The cancer which is arise in the bone marrow is known as a leukemia, which is also known as a blood cancer. And the fifth one, that is adenomas, or the another name, that is adenocarcinomas. Thyroid gland, pituitary gland, adrenal gland and the other glandular tissue cancer is known as that is adenomas or the adenosarcomas. So student, in this topic we have seen the types of a cancer, and that type of cancer or that classification is based on the type of a tissue which is affected. Thank you so much.